Welcome back, everyone. This is video number 2 in our series Mechanical Turk 101, part of our single workshop that was that was an hour long. This is going to be broken up into 3 videos. This is video 2 of 3. Right now, we're going to talk about best practices for creating a good study for Mechanical Turk, creating good hits, and then paying participants, bonusing them, and fixing any errors. So let's get started. So first, we're going to talk about the study best practices. What makes a good study for Mechanical Turk? The first 2 are the ones that I see most commonly in the social sciences. It's just a survey. People fill out surveys, and then they put in their code at the end, as we saw in the first demo. The second typical study is an experiment. So it can be a survey experiment or like a prisoner's dilemma. Again, very common social science study. The last 4 are less common, but still well within the world of social science. So data transcription. Say you've got these big PDF files of government data, and you need people to put in what the data actually say. You can get Turkers to do that. Data collection, so sending Turkers to websites of sort of local mayor's offices, for example, and having them collect who the mayor is, when they were elected, that kind of thing. Image tagging and text annotation are another class of study where you can upload a bunch of data to Mechanical Turk and have Turkers tag an image as being of a bird, for example. Again, that's going back to the first video. Same thing with text annotation, uploading bunches of text and having Turkers highlight text and say this is angry text or this is text about 20th century steam power, or whatever it is that you're annotating. So these are typical things they can do with Mechanical Turk. But it's not just about the study. There's a couple of other things that you need to make sure that you're doing to ensure you have good data. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to be able to match the worker ID to their study responses. And this is with that random code that you see from video 1 and in most summaries of how you use Mechanical Turk. The random code allows you to connect the worker to the data that they generate. That way you can go in and see, did the worker give me good data? And if not, you'll reject the hit. Or if they did give you good data, you accept the hit and pay them. So following that, there's a couple of data quality checks that you should implement regularly in every study. So the first is bot checks. So these are things like reCAPTCHAs that ensure the person is not using automated tools to randomly or even systematically try to select answers. VPN checks are just there to make sure that people are in the location that you need them to be in or that you're requiring them to be in. If you require them to be in the United States, you can do VPN checks to make sure that they are in the United States, and I'll give you some examples of that in the next slide. Attention, instruction, manipulation, and reliability checks are all substantive quality checks within a study. So making sure that people are paying attention, that they've read the instructions. If you're doing an experiment, that they were actually manipulated. So if you say, in arm A, a person's going to get 50 cents if they win, versus arm B, they're going to get $10 if they win. A manipulation check says, how much money are you going to get? And the question then is, did they get that part right? The reliability checks, again, I'll give it another example in the next slide, but just making sure that you're getting reliable data from the participant. 2 other things to think about, bonus payments. So as I showed in the example in video 1, everybody gets a base pay, but you can issue bonus payments to folks for doing really well, or as a part of you're doing more studies if they tag more images, for example. Or if you're doing an economics experiment and you want to pay somebody more for winning, you want to think about bonus payments. The last thing to think about is the qualifications. So what can you issue to Turkers as a way of qualifying them for future studies or retaining certain data about them, so that you can then go back to them in the future and say, okay, I need Turkers who are really good at this particular task, for example. So a couple of big check examples to help you think through how to assure good data quality. So bot checks, again, you can use the reCAPTCHA if you have access to that. If not, the next best thing is some human interpretable natural language questions that are very easy. So what's the opposite of the word inside? Humans can get that really quickly, bots not so much. Same thing as a written out mathematical question. What is 3 plus 4? A VPN check, again, you can do an IP check to see if somebody's in a particular country, which uh, typically is not 100% accurate. But you can also do substantive questions that are relevant to the people in that country. So a frequently used one is, who do you call in an emergency? In the United States, it's 911. In the UK, it's 999. Somebody who's in the location that you want them to be in should be able to know what the emergency number is. That's not a perfect question. Bots can guess it correctly by accident, and people who are used to these questions can learn how to answer these questions correctly. So it's not a perfect question. Attention checks. This is where you want to do a relevant question but tell them to pick an option. So you don't want to have a random question that just says, "Hey, this is an attention check. Press A." You want to have it seem like a normal question and hide the attention check in the middle. This is not a got you question. We're going to kick people out for missing the middle part here. This is just a measure of how attentive people are. You don't want to use this as a in or out, reject or accept question. In part because different kinds of people are going to read through this and fail this attention check, and you don't want to throw out certain kinds of people because they're still going to give you valuable data. It's just they're not going to be as attentive as other people. So you're going to bias your data if you throw people out who miss the attention checks. But what you would rather do is test for robustness. Here's the findings when you include attention check passing people, and here are the findings when you do not. Same thing with truthfulness and validity checks. A truthfulness question will be asking people something fictional. So Wakanda is, of course, the nation in the Marvel universe. So if you ask, have you ever shopped at Wakanda? Have you ever visited Wakanda? The answer should always be no. But people who are not being truthful will be more likely to say yes. Validity checks. This is mostly if you're doing some task that has a true accuracy. What you want to do is have some data that you already have the answer for. So say you have images that you're looking to classify as birds versus cars, right? And you have a couple of images where you know which ones are birds and which ones are cars, and you have Turkers do those images, and you see, does the Turker get it right? And if they don't, then you probably should kick them out because they're not giving you valid data. So generally, you want to reject the bot checks. You also want to reject validity checks, but you don't want to reject people who fail screeners like attention checks or truthfulness checks because they're just not that accurate. A couple of hit best practices. So when you're actually filling in this hit form, a couple of suggestions. Title description keywords should be catchy and should be engaging, but you also want to describe the actual activity. That way, if people get lost, they know exactly what they're supposed to do. And so, if there's a survey and an experiment and an image classifier, and they take the survey and then they end up on some random website, they know they've gotten in the wrong place. You also want to mention any restrictions or requirements that are there, particularly device restrictions. People can't participate on a mobile phone. Make sure you put that in the description. If they can't participate more than once, put that in the description. Reward, I'll get to that in the next slide. Number of respondents. So Mechanical Turk will charge you 40% overhead if you recruit more than 10 people or more per batch. So if you are in, number of respondents here is 10 or more, you're going to hit that 40% threshold. Whereas if you do 9 or less, it'll be 20%. So keep that in mind. Time allotted. Generally give Turkers 2 to 3 times longer than you think the study is going to take. Sometimes people take a long time. Sometimes they've got to go to the bathroom. So you want to give people time to do it. What you don't want to do, sort of the problem with going too long is you don't want people to think that the study's actually going to take 3 hours if it's not going to take 3 hours. Because then people won't take it because it's not going to look like it's going to be worth their time. It's a 50-cent hit that's going to take 3 hours. No one's going to take that. This is also a good thing for the description. Putting in the actual amount of time you expect it to take is different from the time allotted. Expires generally doesn't matter. The only time it really does matter, at least in my experience, is when you have a specific sample that you're not going to get all in one go. So if you need like 500 people from a really low population state like Wyoming, not tons of people in Wyoming on Mechanical Turk on a given day. So you can let that hit go for a month, and over a month you'll probably get 500 people from Wyoming. Auto approve 3 to 5 days. Just give yourself the time that you think you're going to need to look through your hits. All right, question: how much do you pay? The key here is thinking about what your desired hourly wage is, whether it's 15 bucks in an hour, 20 bucks an hour. You want to take that, and then you want to multiply that by the time you think it's going to take to finish a study over the whole 60 minutes an hour thing. So if you think it's going to be $20, you want to pay 20 bucks an hour, and you think it's going to take half an hour to finish, you'll want to pay 10 bucks for the hit. But that's how you set your pay. A couple of suggestions on the filters. I mentioned the master's qualification earlier in video 1. You do want to select adult content usually, so that way people who are under 18 don't participate in your hit. When you're selecting people based on hit approval rate, you want to select between 90 and 95%. That's sort of the usual rate. Once you get to 99%, you're going to tap into people who participate in studies all the time. So in some ways, you're going to be creating a less diverse sample. You're going to have problems with naivete. Number of hits approved, again, the rate's usually 100. Once you get to 1,000, again, you're tapping into the people who are participating a lot. Premium qualifications. This is a case of trust but verify. Mechanical Turk doesn't keep these super updated. So if you are recruiting people from Wyoming, for example, you want to make sure that you ask whether they're still in Wyoming. Lastly, researcher qualifications. This is really, I think, where you want to think about building your own pool of Turkers. What are the kinds of subjects that you frequently recruit? Because what that'll do is every time you run Turkers, you'll build up a set of Turkers who've been qualified as good participants, or people who are left-handed dentists, right? So that you can go back and recruit just those Turkers. The last leg here, reviewing the data. This is how you actually go in and review the data. We didn't cover this in the first half because we didn't actually create data. But once you release the hits, they'll come back in. You'll see this little interface in your requester site. These have already been approved, so you don't see the box here on the left, but you'll see the hit ID, the worker ID. If you click the hit ID, you'll see the data that comes back. Or the data that comes back is here. What you'll do is you'll say, right, in my Qualiturk survey, the person who did 95901, who got that survey code, they passed all the bot checks, and so we're going to click the box here, and then we'll click approve. We'll approve that person's hit. 96867, this survey code person failed the bot checks, and so we're going to reject their hit. That's exactly what's going on here. You click the box and you click reject. They don't get paid. To pay bonuses and issue qualifications to people, in your Qualtrics data or in your study data, you'll want to know who gets bonuses and how much. And so what you'll do is you'll say, okay, 95901, they got a bonus, so we're going to click this worker ID. It takes me to the worker page, and in that page there's a button that says bonus worker. You click that bonus worker button, you put in the bonus amount, and there you go. There's also a button to issue a qualification. Same thing. Click the button, issue the qualification, and you're done. Last thing, yeah. Paying for errors. So I would expect an error rate of less than 5%, but you should at least budget for 5%. So just expect that. If you're going to do 100 hits, 5 of them are going to come back with problems. When that happens, what's going to happen is the Turk is going to email you, and that email is going to include their worker ID. You send them an email back, let them know you got it, you're going to pay them, or you're going to mitigate it, however. In order to pay them for their error, you want to create a $0 hit, just an empty hit with nothing in it. You assign that person an error qualification, assign that Turker, and tell that Turker that they can take this $0 hit. With the hit, you want to require that they have that error qualification. Tell them to take that hit. They take that hit. Then you go in here. You'll see that worker finished the hit, and you'll pay them a bonus in the same way that you pay them bonuses for everything else. So that's it. Those are the basic best practices for recruiting, paying, compensating workers on Mechanical Turk. Thank you.